Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining me on part 2 of my famous grave tours. And I start the video off here in Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky. And this is absolutely a beautiful cemetery. You find all kinds of really fancy grave sites and stuff like that. And there are a couple of well-known people worth mentioning laid to rest in this cemetery. We'll go to those in just a minute. You peek inside of this mausoleum here, and they have a stained glass portrait of the Last Supper, which I think that's really cool. I've never seen a mausoleum or tomb, however you want to call it, have one of these before. That's a pretty neat idea. And here's another example of a real pretty stained glass window inside these. A dove, it looks like carrying an olive branch, I'm guessing, with a cross behind them. It's a really beautiful window, stained glass, whatever you want to call it. When you come to Kentucky, there are two things that come to mind: Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Fried Chicken. And here's the final resting place of the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Harlan Sanders. Colonel Sanders actually started cooking chicken back in the 1930s when he was working at a store, kind of like a fill-in station place back in the 1930s. And it became so popular, you know, people was purposely driving out there just to eat his chicken. And now people all over the United States and probably all over the world enjoy Colonel Sanders chicken. You know, something else that's weird about Colonel Sanders. Boy, you know, I wish I had my sunglasses on me. I regret not having them. But a few weird quirks about him was he was from Henryville, Indiana. Started a company called Kentucky Fried Chicken. But the first Kentucky Fried Chicken opened in Salt Lake City, Utah. Kind of weird, ain't it? All right, let's move on to the next. Another famous grave out here is the grave of Nicola Marshall. Now, a lot of people probably have no idea who I'm talking about, but you do know his work. He is the designer of the Confederate flag, and he is also the creator of the Confederate uniform. And he also did notable portraits of Jefferson Davis and other Confederates, as well as President Lincoln and other presidents. And in 1873, he came to Louisville, where he died in 1917. So here in Section U of Cave Hill Cemetery lies probably the most famous grave in this cemetery as of right now. Here's the resting place of probably the greatest boxer ever, Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali actually began boxing as an idea from a police officer. When he was, I think, like 12 years old, he started into it. And at just 22, he became the world heavyweight title. Got the world heavyweight title. He was also a Olympic gold medalist and a big civil rights activist. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's later in his life, and slowly took his life. On June 3rd, 2016 is when he passed away. You know, one thing I've noticed out here in Cave Hill, there's a lot of animal lovers laid to rest out here. You got dogs on this one, and then just over here you got like maybe 2 swans, something like that. Or maybe they're storks. I don't know what kind of birds they are. I'm not a bird person. See, here's another example of animal lovers that are laid to rest out here. Here's a monument. It's got a dog sitting on a cushion on top of here. So our final stop today at Cave Hill Cemetery takes us to the resting place of General George Rogers Clark. General George Rogers Clark was the founder of Louisville, Kentucky, and he is also the founder of Clark County, Indiana. Clark led expeditions against Indians in 1870 and 1872. He died at Locust Grove at his sister's house and was actually buried there afterwards. And then about 1869, he was reinterred here at Cave Hill Cemetery. We leave Cave Hill Cemetery, and now we are in this another beautiful cemetery in Lexington, Kentucky. And there's a couple people I wanted to mention. This huge grave site right here belongs to Henry Clay. You're probably wondering who Henry Clay is. He was actually born in Virginia in 1777, but moved to Kentucky here in Lexington at around age 20 and started into practicing law and stuff like that, and then served 6 years in the Kentucky House of Representatives. Part of that time was Speaker and filled 2 unexpired terms in the United States Senate before being elected to the U.S. House in 1811. Henry Clay was famed as one of America's greatest statesmen and also was a candidate for President of the United States in 1824, 1832, and then again in 1844. After his death in Washington in 1852, his remains were brought to Lexington for a burial. Well, good morning, fellas. A little cool this morning, isn't it? Yeah? You guys don't have much to say, do you? Alright, carry on. Here's the final resting place of Confederate General John Morgan. He was responsible for a lot of raiding and stuff in through southern Indiana as they come up through the Ohio River, come in through Leavenworth and pass up in through Corydon. And they had a small battle there, like the only battle that Civil War battle that took place in Indiana was right there in Corydon. And he lays to rest here. Now we come to the final resting place of one of my favorite comedic actors, Mr. Jim Varney. Mr. Jim Varney did all kinds of movies and TV shows, stuff like that, but he will always be remembered for his goofy character Ernest P. Worrell, and Ernest Goes to Camp and Ernest Goes to Jail and all those Ernest movies. They're all fantastic. And he lies to rest right here in Lexington, his hometown where he's from. He was a heavy smoker and sadly passed away from lung cancer in February of 2000. You see a lot of people have visited his grave. They've left all kinds of coins, stuff all over his monument to show their respect. Look right here. Somebody printed off a picture of Jim as his character Ernest doing his character. Somebody left not really sure what this is. Somebody left a rock. It says his famous saying, "Know what I mean, Vern?" A lot of people also don't realize that he was also a Shakespearean actor. He did a lot of Shakespearean plays before he got into his Ernest stuff and heavy into these things. He got really famous. He did a lot of stuff like Hamlet and things like that. If you look around online, you could probably find him doing some Shakespearean stuff. And look, somebody also left a DVD of two of his best movies, Ernest Goes to Camp and Ernest Goes to Jail. I love those movies. You can also find videos of him on YouTube doing stand-up comedy in his younger days too. He's hilarious. His impressions he could do. And then right next to him, right over here, is Jim Varney's parents. Seeing all these tulips scattered all out through here, not only does it smell good, but it also makes me think of that Tiny Tim song, Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Now you want to talk about a silly goose. That is a silly goose. Did not expect to see him sitting up in there, but hey, it's comfy, it's warm. Why not? Got the sun baking on you. Nobody's going to pester you in there. Maybe he's not a silly goose. Maybe he's a smart goose. Okay, so our next stop takes us back into Louisville. And we're in the middle of a parking lot. And this one isn't really so much of a famous grave as it is more of a famous cemetery. And you're probably saying to yourself, why, if you're going to a cemetery, why are you in the middle of a parking lot? You know? No, I'm not going to any stores back here. What I am going to is a hidden cemetery, hidden right in plain sight, and probably not a whole lot of people realize it. The cemetery lies right behind these shrubs. Come take a look at this. You would never realize that in the middle of a parking lot, there would be a little private cemetery in here. Isn't that crazy? I am at the corner of Dutchman's Lane and Breckenridge Lane. You can look it up on Google Maps. You can see an aerial shot right here in front of the Bed Bath & Beyond and Hobby Lobby and the Books A Million. Right in front of those stores out here. You're questioning, why is there a cemetery in the middle of a parking lot? The reason being is this wasn't always a parking lot, of course. Back in the 1800s, this was a big plantation. Wealthy family owned this out here. And after that, it was a horse farm in the 1980s, which, of course, that's no surprise to see a lot of horse farms out here. The horse farm, and then the companies come in and got this all commercially developed, but they never could get permission to move out this cemetery. I would think that when you buy the land, I would thought that you would take over the cemetery, but I guess that's still different. I guess that's something completely different than just buying, a piece of property. But there's still descendants out here, and they refuse to give permission to move the cemetery out. They have tried for years and years and years and never could get permission. So the family still owns, the descendants still own this cemetery. It's a little private cemetery, and I guess maybe they're the ones who put up this shrubbery around it to keep people away from disrespecting it and everything. But it's pretty cool. Not often you can come out here and see a cemetery in the middle of a parking lot. It's pretty interesting. The next stop on this tour, I should just call it the Kentucky famous grave tour, but because there are a lot of cemeteries I've been visiting in Kentucky, but that's okay, I don't mind. I do, however, want to show you something really cool. I'm in Frankfort, Kentucky. Did I say that already? Well, I'm in Frankfort, Kentucky, if I didn't say it already. This beautiful Frankfort cemetery. But what's also cool about this cemetery is the view out here. You come up here and I'll show you whose grave I'm standing next to here in just a second. I want to show you this beautiful view. Look at that view out here. Of course, you've got the Kentucky State Capitol building right there. That's the Kentucky River you're seeing right there. This is amazing. It's a great view of the area out here. Okay, so my next spot that I wanted to show you is the grave of Daniel Boone. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that name and recognize that name. Him and his wife are laid to rest right here, overlooking the Kentucky River and kind of overlooking the Kentucky Capitol here in Frankfort. So just a little bit about Daniel Boone. He was born in 1734, died in 1820. He has explored the Bluegrass region 1769 to 1771. He built Fort Boonesborough in 1775. He was directed the defense of the fort in 1778. And then he was re-entered with his wife Rebecca here in the cemetery in 1845. And you can see again just how massive this is. Beautiful grave he has. Another famous grave that lies here, kind of almost unknown. Unless you're a big wrestling fan from the 80s and 90s, you would not know who this person was. You just go around by. But here's the wife, former wife of Macho Man Randy Savage, Miss Elizabeth. I'm sure many people remember her right alongside Randy Savage as he'd always come down to the ring. She'd be with him. And they were real life husband and wife, and they got divorced. And years later, and she of course remarried. And sadly, she passed away of an accidental drug overdose in May of 2003. If you don't remember Miss Elizabeth, look her up on YouTube. You can easily find pictures of her and Macho Man Randy Savage together. Another famous grave. I know there's several of them out here in Frankfort. But here is the grave of Lieutenant Presley N. O'Bannon with the United States Marine Corps. And he was the first American to raise the U.S. flag on foreign soil at the Battle of Derna on the shores of Tripoli in April 27th, 1805. I usually try to stay away from political people and such, but I'm going to make an exception for this one. Here's the final resting place of Vice President of the United States, Richard M. Johnson. He was the 9th Vice President of the United States. Let's see, he was Vice President to Martin Van Buren, I do believe. And laid to rest right here in Frankfort Cemetery, right next to this beautiful memorial for the military. And it pretty much discusses all the different wars from the War of Independence, you know, the freedom, starting all the way back there, going all the way down through the Korean War, Vietnam War, and such. And you can come out here and you can read all about these. There's just too much to go through, and I could make this video last forever. We now find ourselves at Crown Hill Cemetery in Indianapolis, and this is one of the nation's largest cemeteries. Over 200,000 graves out here, and I've got spiders crawling on me. I guess you want to be part of the video too. But there's somebody very famous. One of the most famous graves out here lies just ahead over here in section 44, and I'm going to show you who that is. Here's the final resting place of notorious gangster John Dillinger. During the Depression era, John Dillinger was probably the most dangerous criminal out there. He was a bank robber. He joined the Navy and deserted. Then he and his men killed like 10 men between September of 33 and July of 34. And was gunned down outside of his movie theater in Chicago in 1934 and was killed and is laid to rest here. While we're on the topic of John Dillinger, just recently not too long ago, they were trying to get permission to open his grave and exhume his body to see if that was actually John Dillinger buried in there, or if that was somebody else that they killed outside that movie theater in 1934. And because there's always been these rumors that that wasn't actually him, that it was that he got somebody to look like him and dress up like him and everything. And they say that he got off and hid away for the rest of his life. I have a hard time believing that, because I think if he was actually still around, he would have been continuing on with his crimes. So, and plus, I think that I read that his grave that when he was buried, they filled it with concrete to keep people from trying to rob the grave of him and stuff, steal the body and everything. That's what I've heard. I don't know for certain. That's just what I've read. I wasn't here, obviously, to see it happen, so I don't know if that's true or not. But it's very interesting to read up on it. Our last stop in Crown Hill Cemetery takes us to the final resting place of President Benjamin Harrison, who was our 23rd President of the United States. And he was President of the United States from 1889 to 1893. And there you can kind of read a little bit more of what all he did throughout his life. That's going to do it for this part 2 of my famous grave tour. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. There's a lot of traveling involved, but it was a lot of fun doing this, and probably I might do a part 3 here in the near future. I don't know. There's a lot more stops I want to make, and I know there's a lot that I didn't touch on in some of these cemeteries that I could have, and maybe I'll get back to some of these and retouch up on some that I missed. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys again soon.